Those eggs belong to us now, and I've hidden them in places you'll never find in 1,000 years.
32 seconds later.
And by the way, she's hidden the eggs very... She's definitely... The eggs are hidden! They're hidden! You'll never find them. I know, right? Can you imagine dicks on the internet? Truly, this is newsworthy. Hang on, let me pull out my news thing. Attention! We've got an emergency notification. Apparently there are dicks on the internet. I feel really satisfied where I'm at with the ruminations. I know other people don't give a damn, and that's fine. I'm not expecting other people to. But have you ever built something and then looked back and been satisfied by it? Maybe it's a song you've made, or a performance you've done, or maybe it's something you've written, or maybe it's literally something you've built, like a piece of artwork, or a house, or a structure, or project, or whatever. That's me with the ruminations. I have covered pretty much all the major movies I wanted to. In fact, I have covered every movie I wanted to. As has been mentioned recently, if someone suggested doing a dealer's choice as far as the movie ruminations, I've run out because you know, that's done. So that's done. That's awesome. I feel very satisfied by that. Star Trek, I have covered Star Trek. I've covered Star Trek 2 years ago, admittedly, but the point is, for the last 2 years, I have successfully covered Trek. I have covered TOS, I've covered Enterprise, TOS, TAS, the movies, TNG, DS9, and Voyager. I have covered all of Trek that I wanted to, and I'm really satisfied by that. Like, I don't know how else to put that. It's a great feeling to be able to look at that and just kind of take that in for a moment. You know, I did it. I did it, right? I was telling Reloaded about this when I was finishing these recordings 2 years ago. I was just like, damn, I did it. I covered Trek. And he started making fun of me because, of course, I'm not counting New Trek in that. Someday I may cover New Trek. In fact, I believe there's 2 New Trek shows that are on the Streaminations for potential coverage that way. But New Trek is ongoing, so even if I was to start covering New Trek, then I couldn't finish it because it's not finished. There's 3, apparently. My bad, there's 3. But the old stuff, all the old stuff, done, completed, chkong. Awesome, you know? It's just... I don't know how else to put that. I feel very satisfied with it. And that's why I have to agree with Lord Harriman. I don't want to say, I'm sick of ruminations. It's more like, I did it. I built the house. It's there. I'm proud of it. Moving on.
I'm getting paid a fortune to keep Sheila the kangaroo locked up. This pesky animal must have been causing a lot of trouble for that poor sorceress. I suppose I could accidentally let the kangaroo escape, if you were to pay me, say, a small fee.
No thanks.
Don't worry, Spyro. Sheila won't stay in jail forever. The sorceress is thinking about having her executed next Thursday.
Alright, game's up here. I keep forgetting to run 16 by 9. I'm used to it being 4 by 3 or 5 by 4 where the game's over there. And so, as usual, this game is horrifically dark.
This Rhinoc is too big to charge. You'll have to flame him using the attack button.
Streams, by their nature, are spontaneous, right? I don't really plan out a stream, right? A stream happens. So if there's a random spontaneous discussion about, I'll use the Spyro 2 example again here, consumer trust or the nature of Nintendo versus Sony versus Microsoft, that's something that can go in the highlight reel that cannot really show up in the room. It doesn't work that way. And of course, the final thing is, of course, the stuff that you're discussing in the game itself. But I can discuss that while showcasing it. Let's use an example. This will go in the highlight reel. So, talking about level design, one of the things I mentioned back in Spyro 2 was how the levels felt like they were basically just shotgunned at terrain. They didn't really think about how those levels were constructed or designed or anything. By contrast, here, if I actually sit here and show you what I'm talking about while I'm doing it, I personally consider that to be superior than me being a talking head telling you, because just picture this being a talking head rumination section, okay? Picture that for just a second. So, the level design is already noticeably superior in Spyro 3 over 2, because the first thing we have is we got an opening area which deliberately opens out, thanks to this gate, into a nice big square. We're immediately considered to look right and left. Looking right gives us an edge, which we can explore to the edge of, and a few things we can interact with. Going left does the same thing, terminating at this gate. So, we've got a little bit of flow to this. And no matter what, we're still kind of contained within this area, center, park, plaza. We're contained within this plaza. And the next thing to do is this very deliberate area going up. We have to actually walk up these stairs. We can't just run up them, which of course is important, because that way, when we're coming up here, because we have to make this final jump, that one enemy, which was the guy I mentioned earlier, he's right there. And this then informs tutorialization, because we're pretty much guaranteed we would have to go out of our way to not walk into the fairy who explains the mechanisms of dealing with the enemy. Boom, boom, boom. And so I can show this. I can show you what I'm talking about here. Same thing here. Now we've expanded a little bit because we've added a little bit of a Z-axis to things. We can hop up over here, and we can get up on top of that, which I've already done. In fact, there's something I haven't done yet, which I'll go ahead and show off. Why not? But because we've got a little bit of Z-axis verticality, we've expanded the type of area we can move through, and yet at the same time we are still confined within this area as we are slowly expanding the parts of the stage we have access to. It's like a microcosm of a Metroidvania, right? There's Chakunk, and then Chakunk, and then Chakunk, and as you're moving and as you're developing, you gain access to more. And gaining access to more allows you to have access to more. Make sense? And that is why I consider the highlight reels superior to the ruminations. Any questions? Yeah, I like Rex's comment. To turn that into a rumination, all you have to do is close your eyes. Oh, the editing is... Oh, so the editing is not as bad. No, it just takes more time. Again, like I said, I've been trying to figure out a way to speed up the editing process, which is part of why I'm now using 3 triggers instead of just 1, which is what I used for Spyro 2. For Spyro 2, I would just hit the button and just kind of make it up as I go, which involved some tracking and figuring out where the beginning and end is, and blah, blah, blah. The other thing, too, is... Hell, I'll even do a demonstration. So the other thing I can do is I can hit the start button like I just did, and that way I can be like, waha. And know, because I know that I'm about to talk about something. I know I'm about to start a little speech or a discussion or whatever. And then once I'm done, I can hit the end button, and I now have that little bracket, which I can go and look at later with taking minimal edit time, because I've already figured out the timestamps. If you're wondering why this is actually in the highlight reel, it's because I'm describing the process of making those said highlights. We're still refining it, we're still working with it. But yeah, exactly. The idea here is to have as little manual tracking as possible, because manual tracking takes the most valuable thing of all, time. Now I'm going to hit the end button. Let's try this again. Up! Try not to screw up the landing. Oh, God, second time I've failed at that. Now we're going to fail everywhere. We're going to fail at everything we've ever done in our entire lives. We're going to be a worthless, disgusting failure that everybody on YouTube hates. Wah! There we go. We're going to try to catch this guy, which we did. Then we're going to do a hard left. We're going to remember that we were going over here next instead of going to the right. So we're going to go get this person. We're going to do an up. And then a sideways. Not going to try and push it. Not going to be fancy. We're going to be nice and slow. We're going to miss horribly because the aforementioned total failure thing. Got to keep the total failure in mind. Very important. Very important. Land correctly. And then we got to go to the right. Next thing we got to do is got to do that again. Just the worst thing in the known universe. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and go the wrong way twice. Very important. We're going to go the wrong way a third time. Now, that's actually important. That's all about the RNG manipulation. We need to have that RNG manipulation. Otherwise, we're not even sure we can do this. We want to catch these people on the outside, which we did. We're now in a good position to go down and follow this person through hell, which we have now done. And then we're going to try to go up and to the left. Now, this one's going to be a tricky one because this is going to involve not sucking. And anybody who knows me knows that not sucking is not in my repertoire. So we're going to do our best here to disengage the suckitude engine. And then we're going to be missing one. Now, this is very interesting because I actually don't know where it is. So I'm not sure. Oh, there he is. Yeah, so we've discovered exactly where they are. We knew they would pop up right in front of us. It's all part of the plan. And we did it.
Whoa, that was sweet!
Last time, Hunter was deliberately holding hostage the items he himself needed in order to save the world until we did his stupid little challenges. Now it's much better than that. Now he's just holding babies hostage until we do his stupid little challenges. I'd say probably close to 99% of streamers and YouTubers who do a sponsor video do not actually support the thing they're being sponsored by. They're doing it because they're paid to. Do I have judgment for that? On the one hand, yes, because they are selling out. They are trying to make a living, and they're doing so by pulling the old sports routine, right? You remember that? When a sports person... This actually still happens. When a sports person will get up and say, I may make a lot of home runs on the field, but to make a home run on the breakfast table, you need Bob's Totally Worth a Damn cereal. Right? They don't mean it. They are lying. They are saying that because they are paid to. So, on the one hand, morally speaking, yes, there is absolutely judgment there. Because they are lying, they don't mean it, they are being paid to. However, I am too pragmatic to be completely judgmental, though. So, the other side of that question is pragmatically, no, I don't really have that much judgment, especially for YouTubers who do that. Because YouTube has gotten so bad about how bad their ad revenue is and how bad they are supporting creators that most YouTubers have to do sponsored videos to pay the bills. That's really more YouTube's fault than anything else. So a lot more of the judgment, a lot more of the ire is reserved for YouTube. Oh yeah, and by the way, this is one of the reasons, I know I said I wasn't going to go into it, but this is one of many reasons why I've been pulling out of YouTube for 5 years now. Because YouTube has been getting worse, not better. Something that was suggested, and I'm not going to commit to this, but we are kind of in exploratory land here, is going ahead and actually highlight clipping, aka putting in the highlight reel, anytime we give positives or negatives to stuff. Now, I don't think I'm going to do that full time, especially since in many cases I don't give a negative or a positive until I've had time to chew on it. So the event is over here, but the actual giving is over here. So I'm not going to do that 100%. But since I'm already very much in the zone with regards to 3D platforming, and I already plan to give this positive, let's talk about level design. So already we've got some cool stuff here. Sheila's Alps, for example. Obviously we get to play as someone else. You would think she'd be more irritating in order to play as, because of the fact that she has that wind-up, but no. In fact, actually, she controls much more smoothly than Spyro. Probably at least in part because we've gotten rid of some of the jet speed problems that Spyro has, and a lot of her verticality has been added. This controls very smoothly, and it even makes sense. In fact, if I was to compare this to something specifically, I would compare this to playing as Scrooge McDuck in DuckTales, or playing as Cranky Kong in the recent Tropical Freeze, for example. No delay, no nothing. Boom, look at that. Wow, love it. And then we have her actual level, which once again follows the same tenets of what I was talking about in the previous level, which I've already clipped, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. Everything about this is all about indicators and flow. Let me show you what I mean by that. So first we have to get hit by that moose. Very important. Hang on, so let's rewind a second. So, I mentioned gateways earlier. One of the things you can do is use gateways as a way to kind of draw the eye when you're going through a 3D space. This is true for a lot of games. We'll see this when we cover Modern Warfare 2. We'll see this... we have seen this when we covered Cyberpunk, for example. But here, we go out, and the first thing we're drawn to is like, okay, new space, new thing, what do we pull in? We've got the plateau we've on, lower area, plateau, plateau, boom, 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 boom. Everything is just pulled in immediately and visually. So now we have our search areas. And that's important for something like a collectathon, where search areas is most of the actual gameplay on display. So, if you remember, obviously we already did this level, but last time we were here and there was a person who was like, hey, we need to go and hit these mushrooms. So we go and we hit those mushrooms. Then we have the up area, and we have that up area. Up there were some gems, up there were some gems, and the finish of the level. But not everything is completely spoon-fed to us, because there's one last thing up here. And yet, even though it's not completely obvious, you'll notice there is still a bit of visual distinction. Different types of blues and different types of whites. Even the little frost hanging from the top of that gate is a different style than the frost in the entire rest of the level, to be able to draw the eye visually up there, if a little bit more passively. So what we're seeing here
If you ever forget...
is better flow, better visual distinction, better design, better levels. So, for the first time since I've been covering the Spyro games, I'm going to give a level its own positive. I hope this continues. It is extremely one-sided. There's actually a term for this kind of work, and I forget what it is right now, because it's some stupid legal term. But it boils down to, I make you money, and in return, you allow me to keep some of that money. And I know that sounds like an employee, but that's not, legally speaking. It's its own separate thing. Because employees have their own legal jurisdictions, and requirements, and definitions, which a streamer does not qualify for.
The metal armor those enemies are wearing protects them from your dragon flame. If you hold down the charge button...
Okay. Tutorial. No, it's actually separate than contractor. I'd have to look it up. It's some dumb name. You know how it is with legalese. They always use weird, dumb names you've never heard of before. Sounds like the Mafia.
Well, well, if it isn't my favorite dragon. The sorceress has put me in charge of guarding these bellows. However, I might look the other way if I was distracted. Counting gems.
You are so much more obviously evil this time around. Last time you were on our side, you were just a dick. This time, you are literally working for the enemy. How did they make money bags worse? I like how the answer is sure, whatever, but I said I'd do this for easel games.
What? No? What else are you going to do with all those gems? Buy flying lessons? That was a good one.
You jackass! Why Spyro 2 is not as good as you remembered. And like a picture of Spyro, except I've warped it with the Photoshop to make Spyro go like this, to make him look dorky and stupid. So I'm being insulting to people who like Spyro, being insulting to Spyro, being insulting to Spyro 2, and arrows just... And then a follow-up video. The real reason people like Spyro 2. And what I do is I would... Damn it, Evo. And Warp Core. I would have... This would work. This would work. What was the name of the fawn back in Spyro 2? Grab a snapshot of her in a completely innocent pose, but post it in just a certain way, like so she's kind of looking over her shoulder like this with a smile, and then put a black, like, censorship box over it, strategically, so it looks like she's doing some big, risque, sexy thing. And then title that video, The Real Reason You Liked Spyro 2. It would work. It would work. That's why I don't do that crap. Being able to do something bad with no consequences doesn't spontaneously make it not bad. That's just describing rich people. Your sun has gone out. What is this, Final Fantasy 15?
Spyro, you're just in time. I saw 2 egg thieves run through this door. Well, actually, they paid me to guard their hideout, but that's irrelevant. I'll happily let you through the gate to chase them down for a small finder's fee. Very well, Spyro. It's up to you. Maybe if we both just hold hands and think happy thoughts, the thieves will decide to return the eggs themselves.
Well, he reacts to it more in 3.
Thank you, Spyro.
Yeah, I should have just gone with the GTA approach. How do you win a race? Immediately get out of your car and shoot the rest of the contestants. I forget which GTA game that works in, but it is a proven method. They actually had to later code it in so if you leave your car, you either instantly or very rapidly lose the race. It's like, you have 5 seconds to get back in the car. Now, if they do the 5 seconds thing, you can still actually kill your competitors, you just have to do it very quickly. Of course I've done that, are you kidding me? Why wouldn't I kill my competitors? They were in the way! Hey, jackass.
A bunch of sheep and flying saucers just came out of nowhere and started blasting up the race course.
TOS does have a Halloween episode. It's not very good, but it led to a cool Halloween STO episodes. That counts, right? Also, you want to hear something really stupid that I only realized recently? STO and TOS have the same acronym, just rearranged. For more useless facts, be sure to subscribe to LoreRunner.com. LoreRunner.com. It's the website you can't subscribe to, because we tried that and it sucked. I mean, obviously the whole point of knocking him in the lava is just so we can jump on his head. What? What? Oh my god, I bugged it out so hard the music stopped playing. Because I died as I killed him. Honestly, Doom Eternal music has fit Spyro weirdly well several times now. I don't know what else to add to that.
Okay, Dragon, you've managed to survive longer than I expected, but you haven't the slightest idea what sort of dangers lie ahead of you. I suggest you grab your cat friend and whatever eggs you found and hightail it back home while you still can. I'm telling you this for your own good, you know.
Listen, things are gonna be difficult. Like, hard, even. There's gonna be problems and troubles, and there's gonna be obstacles. You're gonna have obstacles. You should turn around now. Just go back home before it's too late. You don't want it to be too late. There's gonna be time trials. There's gonna be like imprisoned. We might imprison you. We've already imprisoned some of your friends. It's the hair. It's gonna be awful.
Ah, my good friend Spyro. The sorceress caught this naughty bird letting off rockets in her fireworks factory. But I'm willing to release him into your custody, provided you pay his outstanding fines. Oh dear, Spyro, you really should pay up. I think he's pining for the fjords.
I don't get that one.
Hey, what are those things?
These are the latest military hardware. DBX-9 rocket launchers, state-of-the-art.
So why didn't you use them to escape?
Because I have limited ammo, and I wanted to conserve it. For this. Say, where'd you come from?
So, the controls here are surprisingly fluid because, I don't know, it's your typical helicopter controls. Hold down to go up, stop holding down to go down. But there's a fluidity to it, and it seems to... It has enough of a leeway. As you go up, there's a bit of momentum before you stop going up, and as you go down, there's a bit of momentum before you stop going down, and so forth and so on. And so it feels much smoother than it otherwise would. It feels like someone actually bothered to sit down and think about what that would feel like to play, and they actually did some playtesting of it, which is something that I hammer in so often when it comes to these kind of things, especially when it comes to controls. But the other thing, too, is we've got a weirdly large amount of horizontal movement. So the one big thing they changed with, I forget her name, Sheila, I think, was they made her much more vertical, but substantially worse on a horizontal level. You'd think that's true with him, but all you have to do is hit jump once to see that that's not true. Because the moment we hit jump, it, like, changes the physics model from being on the ground to being in the air. It's presuming you're doing the flight physics. And if you're paying attention at the ground level, you can see how much distance we're actually getting. So, we're not actually slower, and we're not less maneuverable. I know I just got hit, but we're not slower, not less maneuverable. We've got good verticality, and we've got good horizontal movement. And the whole thing plays fluidly and plays smoothly, plus the character. I feel like I'm explaining it wrong, but I hope I'm at least making across my point of why this is going to be a positive. Oh yeah, and while you're carrying something, none of that changes. You still have the same overall controls, which is important as well. Because otherwise this could get really old. Like, imagine if it was like, if you were carrying something, right?
Reporting for duty, sir.
Who's the best to control? That's actually a tough one. I'd have to think about that. Yeah, it's not Spyro. I'm just gonna give that away right now. It's one of the other two. I'm not sure. They both control pretty well. I think the homing rockets might push it a little bit in his favor, though. One of the downsides of Sheila was a lot of her attack was pretty much straight below her. She had the stomp, right? Her regular attack was extremely short range and very threatening to use because you had to get right up in the melee in order to use it. With him, you have long-range homing rockets. So, you know. I think I'm going to give it to him. I think I'm going to lean that way. Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm probably going to lean on the side of long-range homing rockets. Because they're long-range homing rockets. Subscribe to LoreRunner.com to find out more about long-range homing rockets.
Hey, Spyro! Zoe told me that if we hit that doodad up there, the portal will open. Why don't you try spitting this rock at it?
You have a bow on you! When it comes to analyzing humor, there's two general types of parody. One is, hey, look at this thing, isn't that stupid? I tend to not find that as funny, mostly because there's not as much thought or effort put into it. It's just, hey, this sucks. Like, you've heard the joke, right? Hey, what's the deal with airline food? And that's the joke. Now, there are ways to make that work, but those usually involve charisma and presentation and all that fun stuff. But the other type of parody is to do something with it. And there's a bajillion things you could do here. There's all sorts of different directions you could take that. But to actually try and make the airline food something. So imagine someone sits down, they're in first class, and a meal is put out in front of them. And they look down at it, and it's like a thing of like those really cheap peanuts, and a styrofoam nut, and a twig. And the person looks up and says, "Oh, I'm glad I got first class." And there's your joke. Right? You did something with it. You added something to it instead of just being like, ha ha ha, isn't this funny? how terrible this is. The reason all this is relevant for this game, the former form of parody, that was Moneybags in the second game. The latter form of parody, that's Moneybags in this game. What are you protesting? And why am I murdering these cows for protesting something? Hold up. What are you protesting? They're protesting dragons. And for this, I am killing them. I am killing protesters who are protesting dragons. Yeah, Pinkertons. Remember. I can't even do appropriate joke. Any joke I can think of is actually that bad. Pinkertons. When you need an evil corporation, don't think Wayland Yutani. Don't think Umbrella. Think Pinkerton. And fail. Rule number 1 of raiding. Never celebrate till you're done. Jesus Christ, I hate that. I am giving that a negative. That is way overtoned. If I've never actually explained that phrase, the reason I call it inches amongst miles is the idea is if there's something that's a mile long and something else that's a mile and 5 inches long, then the thing that's the mile and 5 inches long is better. It is longer. It wins the race, so to speak. But you don't really notice that unless you zoom in and get analytical sufficient in order to be able to tell those 5 inches at the end of that mile. By most metrics, you know, if you zoom in the camera out to see the whole mile, you basically can't tell the difference between the two. Hence, inches amongst miles. It's been nice and relaxing playing the Spyros despite the aggravation of some of the levels, really. Because I can't tell you how frustrating it gets covering an old beloved classic that I don't like. That is not an experience I tend to enjoy. Oh, and speaking of which, something that something that I've been told more often than not, because I've said that comment before, that I don't like badly reviewing a beloved game, especially a beloved classic, right? I've said that so much that I've gotten the comment of, well, why don't you just review it well? I'll let you think about that as much as you'd like to. Because I'm not IGN. That's true! It's true! Hell. I can think of plenty of classic games that I enjoyed playing that would almost assuredly rank in that negative. I've got a perfect example right off the top of my head. Rebellion. Which, for those of you not familiar with it, is effectively the only Star Wars strategy game they ever made. At least it's the only one that approaches good. And that game sucks. The best part is, when we get to a stream of it, we're going to have to pull the other music trick, because all 100% of the music is just Star Wars music. Not a MIDI rendition, not some kind of remix, just 100% Star Wars movie music. So, the whole game is going to be turbo muted. Meanwhile, Evil is over there secretly thinking about all the ways she can get her revenge upon me. For all the times I have said, Hades is the worst game ever made! Oh god, I deserve that. I deserve that. Well, you remember something I've said recently about how I feel like more people... This sounds like an insult, but I really don't mean it as one. More people, I think, based on observation, tend to value unique things over good things. Star Wars Rebellion is probably the closest thing that I come to on that, because Star Wars Rebellion is a very unique game. It is a Star Wars grand strategy. Not a 4X, a grand strategy game. Can I just say everything and leave it at that, Ect, please? Please, can I just do that? Everything.
I hope it's not a bad omen.
Like, I mean, I could do my due diligence and sit down and go down the list, but it would be everything. How many clicks it takes to get to the right information, how much cross-referencing of information, how the actual controls themselves work, how the hotkeys work, how the interaction of hotkeys work, which is something not a lot of game designers think about. Because you can only rebind so much. The hotkeys still have to function in a certain way, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. Then you have... I should clip this. Then you've got... I've already mentioned cross-referencing, which is very important, but there's also at-a-glance, being able to look at something and immediately tell what you're looking at and what you need from it, which is a critically important thing to any strategy game of any variety, whether it's turn-based, or squad, or RTS, or grand, or 4X. All of them require good at-a-glance. Then there's the fact that there's a lot of information which is critically important and never explained or elucidated upon, even within the bounds of what I call info in game, where you need to actually be able to go dig up something else to be able to figure out how mechanics actually work in order to be able to understand what you're actually seeing on the screen. Bad, 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 bad. When I say everything, I mean it. I mean, I've only played one Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and I thought the dungeon crawling sucked in that game. No offense, Ect. It was easily the weakest part of the game for me. No offense, Ect. Anybody who likes that game is just a brain-dead... no offense, Ect. Billions and billions of reasons why lore is not very funny. See, I don't know if I like the idea better of them having a reward for every class, a reward for the class archetype that would be going down that particular branch, or a reward that is for the opposite or a different type of archetype than the one that would go down there. So the puzzle area, for example, could have a combat weapon, or the combat area can have a skill booster, per example. You're probably wondering what's the benefit of that? It would encourage a specific type of order of doing the dungeons. Mega Man style, to put it simply. You would be encouraged through game design to do X before Y before Z, depending on your party loadout and depending on where you want to start the loop, right? And of course, the benefit of the Mega Man style is you don't actually have to start at any specific spot in the loop. You just start somewhere in the loop. That would be especially beneficial on every level after, you know, the first, for example. Because, alright, you've got the first level going, and let's say you happen to level your fighter more than the rest of your team. Well, then your fighter's good to go, so in the next area of the dungeon, you go ahead and focus on the fighty part of the dungeon. With the fighty part of the dungeon done, you get something for someone else, and that helps the rest of the team. You see the logic, right? This is why if I ever get into game design, I'm just going to accept the fact that my games are not going to sell, and just live with that. Co-op? So I was thinking something, honestly, from the 80s, but if we're having some kind of, like, live-action, real-time live-action dungeon crawler, if we're having real-time dungeon crawler, then yeah, I could see co-op as being a really valued feature there. Like, even at its most basic level, imagine one person is like, there's a rope. It's like, what? There's a rope. And then they pull the rope. And that, while they're holding that rope, it's doing something over for the other person's side of the dungeon. Like, okay, hang on, you know. I know that's really bare bones, but you could do stuff like that. And we could do some back and forthing. Portal 2 has a lot of good example of back and forth co-op design. There was one specific section. So I talked about combat dungeon crawling. I talked about skill check dungeon crawling, and I talked about puzzle check. But there's another type of dungeon crawling, which I don't see very often, which is talkie. Again, most of these same pillars exist in RPGs. So imagine for a moment that one quest, it was literally one quest, I did show it off on camera, in Tor. It was the class-specific quest for the agent on the planet I can't think of the name of. Which really helps you, I'm sure. But the way it ended up working out was you, the agent, were running around doing stuff while you were on the comms with Keeper, or ex-Keeper. and Keeper was negotiating with someone. You were running around getting the information. Rishi, thank you, Zektab. You were running around getting the information to help him in his negotiation. And the mere way I'm describing this is probably inferring what I'm going for in a co-op talkie section. Yeah, exactly. One person is sitting there picking dialogue options, and there's no skill checks. There's no right-on answer. There's just a bunch of dialogue options. And a lot of them are misleading, a lot of them are inferring, and the one that works is the one that the other person has to get the info so that they can pick the right thing. And if we want to go absolutely bonkers with it, there'd probably be more than one path to victory. You know, a little bit of gradients in there.
That's okay. It didn't hurt as much as it looked.
I don't know if you caught that, but I couldn't breathe fire on him because she was blocking the shot.
Thanks. What?
See that? She's literally blocking shots. Bad minigame design. Make your escort have collision. The sporting version of Nestle. Odd. Whoa! We were going left, not right. What, Valsen Ball, Evo? Whoa, 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 whoa. We got snow drifted there a little bit. Snow beached? I mean, you ever been beached in snow? Because that's happened to me. What? Ah! So, we've got violent and competitive, we've got competitive outlet, we've got entertainment, and we've got social communal stuff. There's also, of course, politics. And I know nobody likes to talk about politics unless you happen to be playing God of War. But the fact of the matter is... Sorry, that's a dumb joke. The fact of the matter is that politics is a very valuable tool when it comes to sports. I know that sounds strange. Remember, all politics really is the social interaction of people. That's why there's so many different types of politics, like office politics and housing politics and national politics and military politics and economic politics, etc., etc., etc. So sports tends to drift into that by virtue of being a part of the same dynamic. It gets people involved. It gets people invested. People care about X, Y, or Z, and therefore push for that agenda, and so forth and so on. I'm speaking in massive vagueness because you asked me about all of sports ever, which is probably the single most vague question I've ever gotten on this channel. So forgive me for speaking in severe and extreme vagueness, but that's where we're at here. For the hell of it, a non-meme answer. Arshian Gaia is a portmanteau, however you're supposed to pronounce that, of 3 separate Greek words, which I'm not going to bore you with right now because it doesn't matter. It was designed for a character in a story which I actually have technically retconned out of existence at this point, but I do plan to do a new version of that story at some point or another. Now, when I was going to originally set up my YouTube account back in the yay olden days of YouTube, you know, back when YouTube was first starting, I used to have a habit when it comes to naming things, a habit I got out of MMOs specifically, and that was coming up with an extremely unique way to do names so that those names would never be taken, because I fell victim to the same thing that every other person who grew up in the 90s did. You try to go make a name like Sephiroth, or a username like Gades, and it would be taken. Because it's always taken. Any name you want is already taken. Pretty much guaranteed. Now, some people would do the Sephiroth 1137, or 53R... I don't know. You get the point. Do the lead speak thing. I didn't like that. So instead, I came up with methods of trying to do, you know, my own unique takes on names. Hence Arshian Gaia. So when YouTube started to exist, because the name Arshian Gaia goes back to YouTube, and by YouTube I mean high school, I just went ahead and used that because I knew the name wasn't going to be taken, and lo and behold, it wasn't taken. By total coincidence, years later, like I think 6 or 7 years later, I happened to get a brand new laptop for work, and I didn't intend for it to have a built-in webcam. It just happened to have a built-in webcam. And a friend of mine, Gary, and I were doing this little short series called What to Pay. And the idea was we were trying to review games based on what we felt they were worth in literal finances, right? So I was sitting down and doing a couple of those, and I did a random... in order to post that video, I had to have a login. So I just did it on my pre-existing YouTube account, because what else would I use? So if you're paying any kind of attention, the big epic story behind Arshian Gaia is total coincidence. It's one of the reasons, not the biggest reason, but one of the reasons I decided to just axe that relatively early on in my show's career, because that was never my name, it was never the show's name, and it never had anything to do with anything. I like how it still has collision at the moment. No! No! Wasn't trying to go through the door. I'm gonna head out for some burgers. You want anything? So, my take on that. I think the biggest problem we're running into is that people are more aware of games and what games are available and, you know, just that whole general process than they used to be. You remember what... Oh, you son of a... bad dog. You remember back in the day when your awareness of games... Jesus Christ, talk, Lord, just talk. Remember back in the day when your awareness of games came from what other kids said on the playground? Or maybe one magazine? Or just going to the rental store and perusing? Nowadays, there are hundreds of games made daily of just about any genre or variety you can think of, right? There is a huge glut of games nowadays. Now, I don't say that as a negative thing. Quite the contrary, actually. It's just that I think part of the problem is there are so many games that people tend to think that the quality of games has come down, when honestly, I think it's more just we're aware of more games. We are seeing more of the pie. The percentage of good quality games has never really changed. You know? Games have sucked back in the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s, and so forth, and so on. Games have sucked since forever. That's nothing new. And so, we are now aware of a larger piece of the pie, and therefore are seeing what seems like more, when in fact it's just the same we've always been dealing with. Now, I have no proof of that. I have no proof of anything. But that is my personal take on that.
You found Farley.
You call it profit motive, but what it boils down to is priority. Anybody wants to make money with regards to what they do for a living, within reason, right? That's not the issue. Idiots think that I'm against people making money, and that's because they're stupid. No, what I'm against is when making money is your top priority over everything else you do. Because once that becomes top priority... shut up! Everything else becomes secondary. Everything else is acceptable to lose in order to make more money. And yeah, that's exactly how we get things like Mobage. That is directly where Mobage comes from. Maximizing profit at the cost of everything else. Something not a lot of people understand about how the priority list works. Let's say I have two priorities. Let's just make this really, really simple. I would like to make money, and I would like to make a good game. Now, if I put money over the game, that doesn't mean making the game good isn't a priority, and vice versa. Priority comes from a programming term, which I don't actually know because I'm too stupid to know real things. But the idea is, the purpose of the priority list is not, this is more important, it's, when these two things come into conflict, this is more important. I know that's a small distinction, but it is critical for helping to understand why some of these situations devolve the way they do. Because plenty of companies, and this still happens, but this has happened for decades, plenty of companies can still make a good game and make money, right? Because there's not a conflict between the two. So both priorities are satisfied. And you see how this kind of starts to devolve, because in certain cases people are being demanded, you need to not only make money, you need to make more money, and that's what's causing these two priorities to come into conflict, at which point the making money priority takes precedence, and we get mobich and other garbage. If I'm playing a game like this, I don't feel like I'm playing a video game. I mean, obviously I am, but you know what I'm talking about, right? There is a level of immersion. There is a degree of design and thought that goes into the lighting and the grass, which is contrasting against the nice ambers here. You can see how the grass can gets yellow over here. We got the bricks, nice variety to them. You know, this looks like a place, is what I'm trying to say. A fantastical fairy level place, or fairy tale place, but still a place. It doesn't look like a video game to me. And so there's that immersion factor. That's the all-important brickwork that I talk about so often. So I look around and I'm like, yes, awesome. And so I get right into it. I get that believability vibe. Not realism, big difference. Big difference. But believability. Something that feels just like a video game. Have you ever played VVVVVVV? Because that's a video game. There's no immersion there whatsoever. There is, in fact, an absence of brickwork and sprite work. Honestly, if I ask you to just Google that, that's probably going to help more than anything else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's 6 V's. It is. So just Google 6 V's in a row. And then do an image search of that. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I encourage anybody to do this who happens to be watching this. And you'll see what I mean. That's one of the first games that comes to my mind immediately of a game. That's a video game. At no point in time do I feel like I'm going through an area or a stage or a meteor or a level. There's actual lore to that game, but it doesn't feel like it because it looks like that. Now, I'm not trying to say that VVVVVV is a bad game. Quite the contrary. It's actually a very unique and fun game. But it's a video game. Yeah, it's... As I am fond of saying, even Super Mario Brothers, the original, has brickwork. In many ways, pioneered the very concept, actually. Another example of a video game, anything on the Atari. They hadn't really thought of the concept yet, in many cases. What are you doing? So, it just... There was nothing there. You were playing against a black screen, and you were a cube. Or if you were really lucky, you were a line, and that was it, right? Yeah, I know it's strange, but I don't actually feel like I'm playing E.T. when I'm playing E.T. And that's one of the reasons why I have to distinguish that, because it's actually more rare than you'd think to come up with a video game. It's usually the purview of very old games, like 70s range, or... indie titles which, for one reason or another, either went with that shtick deliberately, or were locked into that shtick because it was all they could do. You know, some people... It's the choice of thing all over again, right? You don't really necessarily want your game to look like that, but we don't all have the AAA budget, right? And yeah, the ASCII stuff, all the ASCII stuff. Anybody who's ever played any of those games. The original Ultima, Alakabeth, for example. Or the original Rogue, or even NetHack, to use another example, or Dwarf Fortress until recently. Those games are all video games. Because it's what they had, it's what they could do. Anyways, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Yeah, we've seen enough. Nope, we're good. We're good. We're good. Thank God we muted the music. Are we done here? What are you doing? What? What are you... If I was sponsored by Nintendo, how would I make a commercial while still being honest and myself? Do you like good video games? Do you like terrible corporate decisions that make no sense? Do you like buying games full price 20 years after they came out? You should buy Nintendo. This is a classic problem that a lot of people have. Oh, well, I screwed up at X, therefore I'm never going to try X again. As opposed to, I screwed up at X, I need to try a different tactic, or I need to try and do better. Now, I get it. Sometimes you do need to cut your losses, and sometimes you need to not do things, but it frustrates me how much a lot of organizations, nationally and corporately, tend to look at things and say, well, we tried X, and it failed. So, we're never going to do that again. Yeah, the president in question was the one who directly led to the creation of the PlayStation by virtue of canceling on his deal with Sony a few days before the Nintendo PlayStation was to be announced, because he would get a slightly better deal from Philips. And if any of you right now just thought, who? Or, what does Philips have to do with gaming? Thank you. And meanwhile, Sega has no idea what they're doing. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. I regret nothing. Ugh.
This door is jammed shut. Only the power of gems can hope to move it. Dadgummit, dragon! Just cough up those stinking gems, and I can go home.
Stop talking in haikus.
You've made a wise choice. It will mean more eggs for you, and more gems for me. Best of all, Spyro, I can stop speaking haiku. What a sweet relief. Stop talking to me. I hate speaking in haiku. Just go find some gems.
I got to explain to my niece what microtransactions are and why they're horrible. She listened, as she always does. You know, I try to be very concise and very informative when I'm talking to her. But the thing that really struck me the most was she was thinking about the whole problem for a bit. And then she asked a question, and that just prompted me to come up with the perfect way to explain why I dislike microtransactions as they are applied. You ready for this? This is great. So I was describing to her the whole predatory system, and by that I mean giving her an extremely truncated version of the aforementioned system. I then said, you know, do you have any questions about this? And she frowned for a minute, and she was like, well, hold on. But you don't have to pay money for insert fictional currency here. We'll call them gems, just to relate to the game we're playing right now. So, since you don't have to pay money in order to get gems, how is it bad to buy things from the in-game store? And I was like, okay, no, that's a very valid question. So let me ask you something, kiddo. And I'm going to come up with like a polished way to phrase this, but what I said to her was, how do you think they make money if they don't charge you for the game and they don't charge you for gems?
When all lamps are lit, there is a...
Now, because my niece is my niece, rather than being confused or distraught or anything like that, when she heard that, she was just like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's actually a really complex, an unfortunately complex topic, and there's a lot of psychology and math that goes into it. But the long and the short of it is, that's the simplest and easiest way to explain why microtransactions can go straight to hell. How do you think they make money when they don't charge you for the product and they don't charge you for the gems? Or, I'm saying that wrong. They don't charge you for the product, And you can earn the gems without paying for them. There we go. That's the more accurate way to phrase that. Because you can. Just spend a little bit of time. Do some daily quests. You can. You can get Lotro points for free. Somewhat recently, I was looking into a software in order to help me track my time slightly differently than I currently do. Just to get a little bit more hard data on a minute-to-minute matter of exactly where I'm spending my time right now in my life. I found a few options. All of them were free. Excuse me, all but one of them were free. I didn't use any of those. One of them charged money. Guess which one was the one that was actually worth the damn and actually did what I needed it to do? If I had to add one additional layer to the whole, you know, how do you think they make money thing, it's actually worse than that, because if you think about it for a second, it's not just the fact that 1 or 2 or 5 companies are jumping into the microtransaction bundle and saying, hey, you can get, you know, this game, and you don't have to pay a single dime. You can pay the whole game for free, as long as you do these dailies and get the in-game stuff. It's the fact that there are thousands upon thousands of those companies out there, which are producing tens of thousands of these stupid games. Either way, I've never thought about it. However, what I would probably do, just... What?
Ow!
Oh god, I'm getting donations. Directy is directly trying to kill me. Okay, so where are you going? Where are you going? I actually don't know where he goes. Oh, he doubled back! He doubled back! What? What? What?
Ow!
Ect also asks, do I think Elon Musk is neurodivergent? No, I think he's a moron. I have to wait until it has reached a full and upright position to knock it down again. No.
Ow!
I do have a Twitter. I supposedly have quite a few followers, but every time I send out an announcement tweet, which is the only thing I use Twitter for, I get usually about 10 reactions to that. So I'm pretty sure I only have about 10 people who follow me on Twitter. That's the second time I've had trouble double jumping on top of that mushroom. Like, it feels like it's resisting me double jumping up to it. Whereas I could jump up to that one without hesitation. Look at that. No issues. Why am I having issues jumping onto that last mushroom? Now what? God! Why? Oh, no.
Ow! I went. One egg cage remains. Will you now help my brother to free the last egg?
Go to hell. So there's a common rule about human psychology, which I employ on my very show. It boils down to the idea that if you get something for free, you care less about it. There's less thought or effort or anything put into it. By contrast, if you have to pay for something, you are more likely to actually think about what you're going for. Let me explain how I use that, and maybe that could explain that better than I'm doing with my terrible, terrible terminology. Once upon a time, we actually did this thing where you could just suggest a game to be funded, and then... not even be funded. You could just suggest a game to be streamed, and then we could stream it. As a result, we played and streamed a fairly large number of games. Now, you might say, oh, that's good, right? No, because a lot of those games really should not have been streamed. Either because they weren't a good stream game, or because nobody cared about it. Even the people who suggested it. Because they didn't really care about it, because it was free. Yeah, if the audience size was much, much smaller, and granted, I'm not exactly a big streamer, but If the audience size was much, much smaller, that might actually work. Just, hey, what do you want to stream? This. Okay, cool. But by forcing it into a limited perspective, people tend to actually think more about it. Now, that doesn't have to involve money. An idea I've had before, and something I have sincerely thought about implementing if I'm ever able to disentangle some of the funding off of, like, Twitch, for example, or become independently wealthy or whatever, is make a thing so that every month, anybody who bothers, who is part of the stream, gets a link to a rated vote list, right? And you get one pick per month of something that you would really like to see streamed that month. And then we tally it up and figure out what people want to see streamed and so forth and so on. You get the idea, right? So, you might think, well, how's that's still free, right? Because you only get one, because of the fact that it's limited, it psychologically tends to fill the same slot as you have to pay for it. Because you only get one thing. You can't just randomly throw out ideas all willy-nilly. Why are they all sneezing? Let me give you a little bit of the timeline here. Because I was going to pull the Band-Aid off before Tor with regards to the rumination stuff. But I didn't because I guess the only answer I could give to that is momentum. I was still kind of going along with the fact that I'd been doing that for 5 years as a way to make up to people and make people happy and yada yada yada. Then we started the Tor streams, and then we did the Mass Effect streams, and I forget what else, but it was almost 2 months of not having to worry about ruminations. And that was such a massive increase in my quality of life. It's one of those moments where you didn't realize how much your back hurt until you got your back adjusted kind of a situations, right? It's like, oh my god, I had no idea how much this was bugging me until it went away. And that was the final thing that convinced me that it really was time to rip off that Band-Aid. Yeah, no, exactly, Mr. Ed. And then I did a few things again, because we went back to them. And then I was just like... One of the things that I've learned the older I get is that I tend to appreciate something more the more I analyze it and the more I understand it, not less. I know that there's that first shot and, different experience the first time you see a thing, yada yada yada. But honestly, I don't think FF6 would be my favorite game of all time, to use a direct example, if I didn't know it as well as I do. Like I said, it's related to a question I get semi-frequently, which boils down to, does, reviewing games ruin your enjoyment of those games? And the answer is a big fat no.
Listen to me, Dragon. Spyro, this is serious now. The sorceress is planning a trap for you, and if she catches you, believe me, you don't want to know what she's going to do. Look, I promise to take good care of the rest of the eggs. I mean it. Just take Hunter and go back home before... I can't say it. Just go.
I think we've officially given up on trying to be intimidating since she's outright warning us at this point. So, real talk. This is actually a full topic here, too, because tie-ins being a plague on fiction and media is nothing new. It goes back to the movies and all that fun stuff back when licensing used to be... started to become a big deal, which was literally decades ago at this point. The problem with the tie-ins thing is that it's generally accepted logic that the best time for you to do a tie-in, like merchandising or toys or a breakfast cereal, whatever else, is to do it when the movie or game in question comes out. Now, that logic is one of those surface-level logic things we've talked about before. I need to come up with a term for that at some point. It's something that on the surface seems completely logical, until you actually think about it for 5 seconds and you realize that it's actually a terrible, awful idea. So, first of all, there is evidence that you're actually hindering your overall sales of both overall products by doing that immediately when it's coming out, especially if you're doing it for a product, movie, or game that isn't really proven, since you don't actually know when it's going to be doing its best sale-wise. You're just predicting that it's going to be successful and effectively gambling that it will be able to generate the sales that you're Projecting. There we go. Excuse me. Shallow deduction. I like that. I also like third surface think. That's a good way to put that. Anyways. So that's the first and most obvious problem. But the second is the problem that we were just talking about. If you are actively hindering the production of a movie or a game or a show or whatever in order to try and hit some artificial deadline because someone else says that they can't move the deadline of their toys because those toys have to come out at the exact right time. Like, think about that for just a second. But on top of that, the other side of that is that, and this ties into the quarterly report problem again, a lot of those toy companies or, you know, manufacturing companies or whatever are insisting on a release date of X, Y, or Z, and then demanding that the release date of the game or movie be adjusted to accommodate the tie-in merchandise, even though the assumed base logic is we need these to release at the same time. So rather than trying to negotiate and work on making sure everything's ready to go at a certain period of time, they instead deliberately go out of their way to try and change the release date. Like, anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic. Point being, screw that crap. When we finally start doing lore merch, it'll come out whenever it's ready. Oh, sorry, there was one last thing there I was going to mention. It is a proven economic thing that tie-in merchandising and the like tends to sell best years after the thing in question came out. That is true with an inordinate quantity of things. It's also true that something in a franchise tends to reinvigorate interest in something that just came out. I'm saying that wrong. Franchise interest tends to go up because something just came out, which increases sales of older products. There we go, that's where I was going with that. Sorry. First try. Do I prefer blank... Oh, actually, so I didn't actually finish answering this question. Do I prefer blank slate in RPGs or pre-established character? So, okay. It actually was Jesse's Mask. It is literally something that we had a multi-hour discussion on and finally decided in the line of, we're going to go ahead and give it a negative. So here's the problem with a blank slate character. You've effectively increased your workload by an enormous amount to make the blank slate character part of the narrative, because the narrative cannot accommodate for what that character is, unless it reduces the amount of gameplay. As we've talked about, the more choices the player has, the less gameplay is feasible to tack on top of that. Going back into the days of the old CRPGs is a good example of that. But in more modern terms, something like Choices Of is probably as good as you're going to get, and that's straight up text, with regards to actually acknowledging your choices. So, what tends to happen, and I've talked about this before, is you've got a dog on a leash, right? So you're determining the path of the story, and the dog can veer here and there, and yes, I did steal this idea. The dog can veer a bit, but ultimately the dog can only go so far away from the narrative, because you have to kind of limit what they can do and where they can go and all that fun stuff in order for the story to even, like, exist. Now, what some games do, and I can name two off the top of my head, both of which are JRPGs, in order to get around this, is they make the main character irrelevant to the story. They are a passenger, a viewer of the story. They're not the protagonist. They're not forming connections. They don't have character arcs. They are not a character. Persona 5 and Final Fantasy XIV are both examples of this. In both cases, you are playing a non-character who happens to be the person you are controlling with said controller. But in practical terms, if you were to eject them from the narrative, very little would change. Now, you could argue that in one direction or another, but you get my overall point. That's the compromise that a lot of game developers have come up with. You can project whatever personality you want onto them, but you're on the rails because you're not really a participant in the narrative.
Hi, Spyro.
Ha! The the sorceress has a real prize on her hands here. It took 24 Rhinox to capture this dim-witted furball, so you'd better believe he's not going to get out cheap. Very well, then. I was having a rather good time poking him with a stick anyway. Where are you getting all this money, Spyro? It's not just lying around on the ground, is it? Is it? Ah, what do I care? It's mine now.
The first rejuvenating breath of freedom. With the humility of a wounded sparrow, I genuflect to my noble deliverer.
You're welcome.
It was no big deal, dude.
Yes. After all, it was I who let you out.
Why, you brazenly avaricious, duplicitous, larcenous ursine!
Now hold on.
Aw, show us.
One more, perhaps?
At least.
Please do afford me the sublime honor of enjoying your visitation in the nearest future.
Yeah, sure. Spyro! You're just in time! A Rhinox skateboard gang's challenged us to a race. They said you're slower than a molten crater fire slug. I stuck up for you, though. I told them I've seen some pretty fast fire slugs.
Thanks, Hunter.
You might be able to beat me at skateboarding, but I'd still win in a popularity contest.
Citation needed. There was a lot of backseating, but there was something else too, which is a pet peeve of mine, not a real peeve, but it still irritates the ever-living snot out of me. It's when someone pops in and says, "Oh, did you know this extremely well-known and common fact that everybody knows about this game?" Well, here, let me tell you about it. In Steve's voice. So you see, there's this thing called a hunter, right? Now, hunters, what you gotta do is you gotta make sure to feed your animal. Otherwise, the beast will eventually walk away and you'll lose in the middle of a raid. That's not good. Also, you gotta understand that a hunter has a ranged weapon. So with the ranged weapon, you gotta be able to try and make sure you fight your enemies at something that's other than a melee range. It's kind of hard to get used to, but you'll get used to it. One of the biggest defenses that toxic people tend to give for being toxic is, well, you don't want to be an echo chamber. And that's, I'm sure you've heard that before, right? Where someone who is being toxic, if you threaten to ban them or whatever, it's like, oh, they're just creating an echo chamber. Or worse, they tend to do that, like, it's this whole psychological manipulation thing, because they do this preemptive thing where, oh, they're just going to ban me, and that's just going to prove that I'm right. And they do that, and then your mind, which is naturally contrarian by its very existence, tends to think, oh no, I better not ban them, because that would be proving them right. But that's not how that works. That's the trick. You see someone toxic, you ban their ass, because they're being a toxic asshole. Now, I will freely admit, it actually took me a while to learn that lesson, in general, but especially with regards to the show. There's a little bit of, I'm not gonna make it, not gonna make it. There's a little bit of, it's true, Yada! It's so true. I don't know, it's a little bit of confidence, I think is the word I actually want to use there. I know that sounds like a weird word to use, but what I mean by that is, their argument holds no weight other than the weight you are willing to give it. Right? If you are willing to think, oh god, this horribly evil, messed up, screwed up, toxic, deranged, asshole, dick, Rule Zero violator, whatever it is, person, is valid, then you have created the reality that their comment is now valid. If you do not, did you donate? I didn't even see a donation come in. There it is. Give me a moment. If you allow their comment to be valid, then they have effectively won, and you have gone ahead and created the situation and environment which they wanted to begin with. Now, yeah, it also pretty much signals that you are open game for anybody else who wants to be a dick in a similar manner. And plenty of people will gang up on you like that. By contrast, if you have confidence in yourself, you can confidently say, no, their argument is stupid and a fallacy. They do not actually have any validity in what they're saying. The only reason they're saying it is to be a dick. For example, just because I've decided not to listen to a toxic person does not mean I'm not willing to listen to people who do not agree with me. One of the most common types of arguments I tend to hear in favor of, you know, those kinds of people, right? And there's actually another layer to that, too. Even if they're actually right about their point, it doesn't excuse their behavior. It doesn't excuse them being the way they are being. Whether you have a valid point or not does not change the core issue. Or, to put this into very simple terminology, you're not being banned because you disagree with me, and you're not being banned because you're right or wrong. You're being banned because you violated Rule 0. The end. So sure, let's talk about the hair. I'll make it a highlight reel, why not? So for those of you who never heard this story, once upon a time, I was deathly ill. I don't say that facetiously. You notice my tone has changed here to indicate there's no memeing, and there's no joking. I was on the verge of death, and in fact was at a state where I could have died basically any day. Now, I didn't know that at the time. I found that out later, after I got into a hospital and had them actually look at me, but that was the state I was in. Now, during that period of time, I was in such an onerous amount of pain that I don't actually have words to describe it to you. If you ever wonder why I say, with a little bit of bragging, that I have a high pain tolerance, it's because I know I have a high pain tolerance. So, in that state, oh my god, it resealed the thing. Do you see that? What? In that state, any kind of movement outside of a very, very limited range of movement was causing me to have tremendous pain. Now, that, as a side note, anybody who has long hair knows, long hair requires maintenance. Even for something as simple and basic as sleeping, for example. So, the rather banal answer for why the hair went away was because it was causing me a tremendous amount of pain. So, with not a lot of other options or alternatives, I shaved it all down. This right here is extremely easy to deal with and allows me to not have any neck issues or pain issues or whatever. So that's the original reason why I did it. It stayed shaved because, well, first of all, because regrowing that much hair is going to take me absolutely forever, but second, and arguably more importantly, it became kind of a symbol to me. Go ahead, make fun. It's okay, I deserve it. But it became a sign of the fact that I was, you know, deathly ill and not in a good place in my life and not recovered. Since I'm one of those extremely weird people who tends to associate hair with some kind of symbolic significance, as opposed to just being a cosmetic choice. At least for myself. No, the first time I used this cannon. And apparently the deaths resealed the box or whatever. There it goes. Do you like murdering people with a death ray? Because I do! Die, Evo, die! Run, screaming! So we are, I just want to make this very clear. We are freezing cats in giant blocks of ice and using them as hockey pucks. I want everyone to understand, this is our life now. This is what we are. This is what we have become.
This isn't my bowl. It's just another stupid eye.
Knockout! Piece of cake! Right on! And nobody's gonna get that. On the website, lorerunner.com.
Have this. I fished it out of the molten lava.
Ugh. Thank God that's over with. What? I'm playing Spyro right now, so person A would be responsible for clipping sections of the reel, which person 1 would be responsible for then editing together. While they're doing that, I'm gonna die, because this is terrible. What is wrong with your eyes?
There's a golden goose at the top of this here mountain. I want to be the first person to the top so I can grab it.
What is wrong with your eyes?
I just bought some Insta-Sprout Ultra Super Grow seeds from a bear with a bag of gems.
Yes, I work at Wayland-Yutani. But, you know, Wayland-Yutani cares about its employees. We here at Umbrella Incorporated want to make sure that you, the employee, are satisfied, comfortable, and taken care of when it comes to your work experience. Whether developing BOWs or just coming up with a new plague to end humanity. Umbrella Corporation. We're here for you.
Maybe I could convince the dragons to come back, if you let me go.
I'm sorry. I can't.
At least Hunter doesn't piss me off anymore. Credit where credit's due. Although, he could literally fit through those bars! I can fit through those bars, and I'm a giant! Okay.
This might be our last stand, Spyro. The sorceress plans to use this monster to destroy every iota of her opposition, beginning with the two of us. Alas, there is no time for ruminating. A battle awaits us. I will endeavor to assist you by means of a steady provision of combustible projectiles.
You heard him! This is the reason, right here. There's no time for ruminating. Yes, this is like recently refrigerated butter. That is a wonderful analogy. I'm stealing that. So I just thought of a wonderful analogy. You know how we like to talk about certain levels of game design and flow and controls as being smooth as butter? Well, then there's something that's hard and stiff and unpleasant, like refrigerated butter, which is an idea I completely came up with myself and should get all credit for. Please send all of the licensing fee checks to lorerunner.com/stoleyouridea.tesla. Doom, I was actually describing this to somebody, I think it was Mr. Red, actually, a while ago. Doom music is designed to be it's repetitious without being boring, which is honestly a lot harder to pull off than it sounds. so I give him credit for it. He likes to do layered, almost harmonies, no actual melody at all. Just doing a harmony and then layering something else on top of it, and then transitioning to something else, and then transitioning to something else, and so forth and so on, kind of forever. And it just sort of loops around itself like that, without ever really changing the base of the song. It's a fantastic way of doing music. And, again, tremendously hard to pull off without literally making the music sound boring. There it is. Booyaka. I think we could go memeier than that. Let's see here, Mike. We can get really memey if we try. Anyway, so then Spyro was shot to death. Let's see what the speedrun's like for 100%. Ugh! The current world record for 100%, excuse me, 101% for Donkey Kong 64 is 5 hours and 10 minutes and 47 seconds. How do you make that turn? How do you make that turn? I think we may just have to start the turn really early like that. Nope. Let's try a different strat. Let's try leaning forwards instead of back. Okay, hang on. I've got an idea. That's so stupid!
Hello, you must be Spyro. I've heard a lot of people talking about all the things you've done for them. Do you think you could help find my girlfriend Tara? She went off to raid the tomb of the stone golem, but I haven't seen her since. I'd go look inside the tomb myself, but, you know, there's all these scorpions.
Sure, I'll find Tara the Tomb Raider. Because why not? Although, if she really is, then I doubt she needs help. But, you know. I can make that. Well, I couldn't make that. I mean, to go into that polish thing a bit, I've talked so much about polish and how relevant and significant it is for game design. Not just game design, excuse me, everything. Think about the fact that they bothered to add new animations and graphical styles and designs for all the dragons in Spyro 1. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't add anything. They're still just random dragons you're saving for no good reason, really, other than to progress. But that extra little effort, that polish, is what I tend to appreciate. And, yeah, every dragon being unique adds to the story. To the story axis, to be more accurate, of Spyro 1. It's why I gave that a pause. In fact, I think I technically gave it 2. And they look damn good, and they were very well animated. Like, someone put some effort into their little flourishes, even if they were usually just a couple of seconds long. That's polish right there. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Belvatrix. It's the difference between the RE2R remake, which I realize I just said remake twice, shut up, and the RE3 remake. There, I just said it once. As I complained about during my RE3R review, which I believe is current after the Oblivion line, unlike 2, RE3R was boring. RE3R was undesigned. It's a damn shame. Anyways, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So this isn't tooting my own horn or anything, it's just something I struggle with as a creator or a designer, whatever the hell you want to call that. Polish is why the Star Trek rewrite videos take so damn long. Because every now and again I look at a specific scene and I'm like, I don't need to do that little extra flourish. And then I argue with myself, like every time I argue with myself, like, nah, nobody's gonna notice, nobody's gonna care. Nobody even watches these videos anyway, so who gives a damn? And then I stare at it for another like 10 seconds, ferociously arguing with myself internally. Until finally I'm like, fine! And then I sit there and I go and spend the extra half hour doing a few frames of extra animation just because I'll notice. And who knows, maybe someone else too will someday. I don't know. Nope. Wow, that jump. Okay.
Well, Spyro, I bet you're glad to see me. It just happens that I know the password to open the door to the tomb of the stone golem, but it seems to have slipped my mind for the moment, if you know what I mean. It's just as well. I've heard there are enough riches inside this tomb to pay a dragon's ransom, so to speak. Very well, then. The password to open the tomb is... Are you ready? Gullible!
Ironically, there's actually a decent number of polished games out there. Not as many Polish games, but plenty of polished games. Oh, come on! How did that not make it? I just... Yep, as expected, she's fine.
Well, well, look at you, showing up here to raid the tomb after I've done all the hard work. I've spent all day pressing switches and shoving boxes around, and you just waltz in here expecting to claim the treasure? Well, you might as well have it. It's only a lousy egg anyway.
I don't remember Lara being this much of a prat. We never got a key. Oh, we did get a key. Never mind. We have the key on us. Hey, Lore, where's the key? Like, getting rid of IP sounds like a terrible idea. But then when you think about it, it's actually even worse than that. That's not a joke. Consult your doctor today. Do you have glowing eyes, sunken cheeks, an unresistible urge to cackle every time someone mentions something cute or innocent? You might be infected with the evil. Where? Really? Okay. What changes do I make to Twitch? Believe it or not, I've actually thought about this. So first of all, I rename it to something else, by which I mean I just replace it with something else. Don't know what we'll call it yet. We'll figure that out later. We'll glow over that thing again. Gosh darn it. More interface features, more functionality, better notifications of, and better options for notifications. Being able to see when someone has started streaming, when someone has started streaming and what they're streaming, when someone has something scheduled to be streamed, what they streamed last, or when someone puts up a poll or a notification or a chat or whatever, right? And all of those would be a toggle. All of those would be something that you, the viewer, could say, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, to an individual thing. Yeah, get rid of automated playthrough, nuke that crap. Just get rid of that crap. I absolutely think there should be more polling and interaction options with the viewers. So right now I can throw up a a Twitch poll, which can last anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes, I think is the range. And it only allows for like 5 options, and that's kind of it. For example, so one of the things I've mentioned before is the idea, okay, bring back hosting, for God's sakes, and fix auto-hosting, which was never working properly. But have something like, say, let's use a random made-up example. Let's say that once a month, I want to have a poll for all the viewers on Lorer. I don't know, we'll come up with a name later. That allows people to say, this is the kind of stuff I'm interested in streaming for the next month. And actually have there be multiple styles of polls, too, because most polls that you see on the internet are all first past the post, because those are the quickest and easiest to program. But once you have it, so this is the weird thing, because even though those are easier to program, setting up a proper voting method, like a preferred ranked choice voting method, will take more time to set up initially, but works perfectly fine once it's set up. So being able to give people the option to do a ranked choice poll is another thing I would do. Oh yeah, just transferable something. There are multiple voting methods, and the fact that we're stuck in first past the post on the internet is bad enough. Never mind the fact that we're stuck that in the country I live in, but that's neither here nor there. What other things? More moderation tools are always helpful. There are a good number of moderation tools on Twitch, but we can get more gradient. We can get more specific and detailed and nuanced in how we prevent people from doing X, Y, or Z. Also, Twitch needs shadow banning. So for those of you, this sounds mean, because shadow banning is kind of its own thing, but to be very clear, I am 100% in favor of shadow banning. So shadow banning is when you have banned someone, but they don't know it. From their perspective, their interface, their interaction, acts as if nothing's changed. They can still talk and chat and spam, dick ASCII pics or whatever the hell it is they're actually doing to be worthy of banning. But nobody else sees it because they're banned. Yeah, I already went over there. Oh, yep, okay, yep. And speaking as both a streamer and a YouTuber, I am 100% in favor of shadow banning. Now, the problem is, as Takoida points out, in my exact setup, which is kind of rare, admittedly, they would be able to tell immediately that they're shadow banned. So that wouldn't work out as well, but I still think it should be an option. So yeah, shadow banning... The reason I'm in favor of shadow banning is, historically speaking, if you ban someone, there are two possibilities. They will decide to continue to be a dick and either make a new account or spam something else, or spam people in whispers. That's another thing that I'll talk about in a second. Or they will give up and move on. Shadow banning tends to have an effect on where the people get sufficiently detached from the initial moment of frustration because they're not getting reactions, which is what most trolls want. So they have the tendency to, get de-invested after being shadow banned because they're not getting reactions. Even if they notice they're being shadow banned, they still tend to be like, whatever. Where are the crystal caves? Oh my god. I mentioned the whisper thing. I want to talk about that briefly because one of my biggest complaints is that if let's say Robostal right now starts spamming some extremely racist, homophobic crap in chat. So I naturally ban his ass. Nothing is there. No mechanism exists to prevent Robostal from then spamming every individual person in my chat with whispers with that same crap. Now, that's a little bit harder to do because of the nature of how that works, but there are ways to basically make it so that, let's say if I ban Robostal, have a secondary string which will track all of the people who are currently in my chat and effectively set up an auto block in between him and all those people, right? Yeah, there's a reason why people tend to have Twitch whispers off by default, by the way. It's one of the reasons why Bregman, every time she has to send out an invite, has to specifically say, make sure your whispers are on, because we send out invites via whispers. Yeah, we can also just do a throttle. Just make a thing where you cannot send whispers after being banned for a period of time. Like, there's ways to do this. There's ways to make this work. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if Cashel's even here to hear the last part about this, but the final thing I would change about Twitch is I would hire more actual real-life people whose job it is to be a brain on top of the algorithms and mechanisms so we can catch all the things that the algorithms and mechanisms get wrong and actually have judgment calls. Like, Sparks was very buggy there. Well, that's actually horrific.
Drat! Double drat! Drat, 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 drat! I never knew dragons were so fast. That's it. I give up. I'm retiring to Spooky Swamp to become a haiku poet.
But you hate haikus! Oh my god. Really? We thought thieves were such a good concept, we wanted to introduce them in top-down format. What? I didn't get the key. Did you? Yeah, if a great way to explain Lotro is, imagine that you can sit down to a really excellent, like, short movie, like a 5-minute clip, and it's good. And then you have to, every time you do that, you have to sit down for about 2 hours of watching paint dry. And you have to pay attention to the paint drying, because if you screw up, then you have to rewind and go rewatch the part of the paint drying that you screwed up on. We've actually had several bugs, but none of the bugs I think are negative worthy now. Most of them have just been silly Skyrim-style bugs.
Check it out. This is the world's fastest turbo snowboard course. The local champions are the Sasquatch 6, a gang of Yetis on souped-up snow discs. I bet that you could outrace the lot of them. If you win, we'll get a huge pile of treasure. If you lose, I'll have to slick down the whole course with my tongue.
That makes me very tempted to lose on purpose.
So, ready to race?
The lock-on depends on your camera, not your sub. I actually demonstrated this about a minute ago if you were paying attention. Because if I'm tilting after someone and they go around a corner, it doesn't matter if they're still in full view of my sub, they have gone out of view of my camera, and therefore I can no longer see them, and the lock-on gets lost.
I think my tongue is frozen. You better not lose again.
Okay, you got me there, game. Ooh, what? Huh? What are two of my favorite films of all time? Star Trek II and Empire Strikes Back. Neither of those are plot-driven stories. I don't know why it keeps turning to the left. Nothing about what I'm doing is to the left. There's no left happening here, and yet it keeps turning. You've seen it several times. Where it's like, whoop, and it just turns for no reason. Nope, I gotta finish the level, Mr. Red. Gotta do my due diligence and give this game as many negatives as possible. Like, it happened there, too. I was trying to flip straight vertically, and it was like, I'm gonna do this weird diagonal thing. What? Whoa, I don't even know what happened there. What? Did Bob from accounting program this level? Is that what's going on here? Because that would explain a lot, really. Yeah, like Diablo Immortal, I hate. Without hesitation. Why are you doing that? I have to do tricks to get speed. I can't do tricks without falling off. Because it keeps going woo. Like that. Yeah. Even knowing it was going to happen, it still almost got me. Those are probably the only two I can name off the top of my head of games that I actually hate. But if I sat down and looked up, like, here, let's do a test. What am I hearing? That is the exact same bug twice in a row that hit earlier.
So, Brock.
What? What was I saying? What is happening? Why is this level so crap? Why do the physics not on this level? This is gonna be funny. This is gonna be the only one we don't 100% because I can't do that race. Like, that's gonna be my life. We're not gonna 100% one of these games because of a terribly designed level. Not because it's hard, but because it literally isn't working right. So now it's like a mystery. Okay. I really think that speaks for itself. See, I got boost that time. No rhyme to it, no reason. Just decided to give me boost.
Yes! You schooled them like a bunch of frostbitten, flat-footed, molasses-eating, lead-pants-wearing, cross-eyed glacier trolls riding slabs of plywood with sandpaper on the bottom. And we won some shiny stuff, too.
More good stages than Spyro 1, but as many bad stages as Spyro 1. Yeah, this is probably going to fit into yet another category, of which we have several, of a game that is much more enjoyable if you don't 100% it. So, I'm going to try to remember that I'm going to put those graphics at the end of the highlight reel this time and actually talk in a way that conforms to the graphic being shown. So as you can see, we have been given a +8 to story, which gives us a rough density per hour of 0.47, and a story ratio of 90%, which is actually pretty good. Over on the gameplay side, we have +8 to gameplay, with a density per hour of 0.47, which may sound familiar. And of course, at the end, we have a gameplay ratio of 60.53%, which is not good. It's still net positive. Anything above 50% is good, but that's still not great. That gives us our final golden number of 44.43. Now, those of you watching the highlight reel might notice the significance of that, but for those of you watching this live right now, the golden number for Spyro 1 was 42.14. That is what we call inching over the line. Or perhaps, to put this into slightly less kind terms, succeeding in spite of itself. Honestly, I think Spyro 3 would have... So let me get my final thoughts. I think Spyro 3 would have scored substantially better if they would have quit the goddamn minigames thing, if the game had the polish that the first game had, and if the game was actually properly tested and played the way it is supposed to play, instead of having this buggy ass mechanics and jumps and just all the physicsy issues we kept running into. This game needed more polish. Pure and simple. Yeah, no, so I don't have much else to add, but I'm going to try to do my best here, as I always do. Spyro 3 feels like the most complete product, but also... I'm saying that wrong. That's actually the total wrong thing. It feels like the least complete product of the most complete content. The core content of Spyro 3, the meat of the game, is definitely superior to both previous games in my opinion, but it feels like someone was throwing paint at the wall as fast as they possibly could in order to get that sucker, you know, the proper color in time for whatever reason they're painting. This is the worst analogy I've ever given, but this is still the analogy I'm sticking with. Because it is very clear that they did not know or did not care enough on either how to or... Wow, I can't talk today. I'm never doing ruminations again because I can't talk anymore. That's actually the real reason I've lost my ability to speak coherently. So it feels like they were so rushed and so untested, and there were so many decisions that I could point to over and over and over again, which all boiled down to nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to care. Just get the game functional and then get it shipped. Something that happens a lot in video game, in story, in shows, in movies, in music, like just everywhere. It is an extremely common problem, and here we are. Yeah, it was a cash grab. And that sucks, because I think that if Spyro 3 got the polish of Spyro 1, it would stomp Spyro 1. Unfortunately, what we have now is this. So, I'm going to go ahead and do my usual post-stream paperwork. Not 100% sure the highlight reel is going to go live today. That takes extra time. But we are going to be starting our second stream at some point today, and that will be The Bard's Tale. No, not that one. No, not that one. No, not that one. I hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you next time.